Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm standing here to try answer the question on how we can move our biodiversity discussions beyond such confined environments and into the wider network of application. And this is a very interesting discussion because if you've read the recent scientific reports, the IPBES reports being one of them, they indicate towards the failure of us, or maybe of you, or maybe of anyone else as an expert, to get beyond having information confined to a certain group of people. And this is why, as a representative of young people or youth network, I'm here to try to see what actions specifically can we take to try to move to a wider audience that will result into a more consolidated action for better results. And one of my points is we need to provide safe and free spaces for alternative dialogue contexts. The dialogue can only happen in environments where everybody feels free to speak, free to put in their inputs, but then they're also safe. They feel that the information they provide is secure. Oh, I'm not yet done, I'm sorry. I'm also looking at the ways of us as experts exploiting different approaches to our communication. And we should learn that there is no single way that is the only way. As experts, we must learn to appreciate that while we may consider ourselves knowledgeable and other people may also consider us knowledgeable, there is also need to build our capacity to appreciate the role of other stakeholders in our communication spaces. And therefore, we need to appreciate input that comes in from even the non-conservationists out there. We need to also look at the ways in which we can put biodiversity texts and communication and related information into local context. And in this regard, we need to make local people who are direct custodians of a majority of biodiverse spaces to understand their role and have deliberate conversations regarding the future of these spaces. And people will only talk about what they know. And so whatever information we bring out from such confined spaces, from the laboratories, from the library, we need to explore ways in which we can share with the wider audience so that we nurture a system of conversations beyond what just lies in our minds and in our setups. They need to also integrate biodiversity into key priority areas, and speaking from a perspective of the Global South, looking at agriculture, health, education, children welfare, development, that these are the top priorities of many stakeholders in this region. And this may not only apply in the Global South, but maybe even in the Global North. Then how do we embrace a collaborative approach between experts, young people, policymakers, to mainstream biodiversity topics into these priority areas so that we encourage innovation, creative conservation, climate-smart agriculture, and those kinds of thinking that will bring out thought-provocative discussions. They need to impress media, and in this context, both local and international dialogue as a tool for communication, that yes, it is good to put our findings, our knowledge into paper, but also to get in partnerships with media, which has a big push factor to interpersonal dialogues. And we should extensively exploit this to promote biodiversity conversations. Sorry about the slide titles. My sixth slide is talking about training and capacity building. And on this, I stress on the need to encourage training and capacity building in local context, such as training trainers of trainers and introduction of discussions, especially on new scientific terminologies. As experts, we have the tendency of introducing terminologies that are all known to us, and they have no much meaning in the local context. So we need to see how we can break down the jargon for the local people to understand before they can actively take part in discussing these issues. Those who are the COP14, you remember there was a very big discussion on bio, DSI, but this may not make any meaning to the local person. A random person on the street may not understand why you're bringing this into the discussion and how they are affecting them, and if they are to take any conversations around them, what direction should this take? So before we talk about, if we introduce new scientific jargon or those kind of technicalities, and we want to realize a wider perspective of communication, then we need to break them down further. Engagement of stakeholders in policy and decision making. I view this as one of the most vital tools we can use so that everything I've talked about is based on policy and decision making, starting from your willingness as experts to take the decision to accept that we can move discussions beyond conference room walls and beyond our person-to-person communication and putting them more into the wider context, and encouraging policymakers, the private sector, all other stakeholders to take these conversations wider and integrate them into their day-to-day events and activities. And I would like to go back to slide number 2 and say thank you because I'm now done.